In the headlines, prospects for inter-Korean talks. Experts in North Korea say high-level talks between the two Koreas are likely to happen only after Korea-U.S. joint military drills wrap up. But some say it's possible that the talks could happen before the drills begin. Korea's industrial output grows at the slowest pace since the year 2000 as the domestic economy still struggles to recover from the April Sewol-ho ferry disaster and strikes in the auto industry. A deadly attack in Egypt. Bombings in North Sinai kill at least 27 people, and the Islamic State's Egypt branch claims responsibility for the attack. Early edition at 6 begins now. Good to have you with us on this last Friday of the month here in Korea. I'm Lee Ji-yoon in Seoul.
Well, TGIF, this is Daniel Chen. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Now, if you backtrack to the start of this year, relations between the two Koreas got off to a pretty good start.
It seemed pretty good at that point, but both countries seemed eager and willing to engage in high-level talks back then. Those were the days.
Yes, but then things turned cold when North Korea virtually rejected South Korea's offer for talks, giving Seoul a set of preconditions.
Our Connie Kim spoke to some experts to hear what they see in terms of inter-Korean talks in the coming months.
Since South Korea proposed high-level talks with the North late last month, the two Koreas have been unable to narrow their differences over a set of preconditions laid out by Pyongyang. Experts say that while the momentum for dialogue appears to have been lost, they're optimistic that talks could eventually resume, given policy goals in Seoul and Pyongyang. On the South Korean side, President Park Geun-hye wants to see progress in her trust-building process as she enters her third year in office. And North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, in his fourth year in power, wants to ease the economic hardship in the country by ending its diplomatic isolation. Experts also say, however, that both sides may have to wait until after a round of military drills between Korea and the U.S., scheduled for March, a halt to which was on Pyongyang's set of preconditions.
I would not expect any serious talks during the drills. Indeed, once it begins, everything will be frozen for a while. If nothing is heard until the beginning of these exercises, it means that the situation is likely to remain frozen. But, well, maybe even in this case there will be more contacts after the exercises end.
Others suggest the talks could occur even before the drills.
The North will ramp up pressure on the South until mid-February, but could then propose inter-Korean military talks to seek the scaling down of the drills or other political gains.
Pyongyang has long used inter-Korean talks when it wants to break out of its diplomatic isolation. Underlining its efforts to mend ties with the outside world, Kim Jong-un has reportedly accepted Russia's invitation to visit Moscow in May for an anniversary of its victory over Nazi Germany in World War II. There is also speculation Kim might head to Indonesia to attend the Bandung Conference of non-aligned Asian and African countries in April. Kim's grandfather and the regime's founder, Kim Il-sung, attended this event back in 1965, and the younger Kim has a track record of modeling himself after his grandfather. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Now, yesterday we told you about former President Lee Myung-bak's shocking revelation about North Korea's offer for talks in exchange for aid. Now, today, the presidential office of Cheongwade called the revelation appalling. An anonymous Cheongwade official questioned how detailing accounts of past foreign affairs, including inter-Korean dialogue, would promote national interests. The official also said the current Park Geun-hye administration believes in transparency when carrying out its foreign policies. In his new book, former President Lee revealed that while he was in office, North Korea repeatedly demanded various forms of aid from the South in return for a leaders' summit and an apology for torpedoing a South Korean warship 5 years ago. It looks like more people in North Korea are using mobile phones. The Seoul-based Korea International Trade Association released data on Friday showing that North Korea imported $82.8 million worth of mobile phones from China last year, nearly double the amount recorded in 2013. That's the highest since the association began tracking import volume in 2007. Recent reports say that there has been a boost in the demand for IT devices like smartphones in Pyongyang, with the growth of the elite class after Kim Jong-un came to power. As of June last year, the number of mobile phone users stood at 2.4 million in the secluded state, or roughly 10% of the entire population.
A new year, but same old rocky road in terms of Korea-Japan relations. That's what some experts on East Asia are predicting, despite this year marking the 50th anniversary since the two countries established diplomatic ties. A poll by the U.S. Center for Strategic and International Studies found that 6 out of 10 experts see Korea-Japan ties remaining frosty this year, and cooperation between Seoul, Tokyo, and Washington sporadic. More than 20% said they think ties will actually worsen due to disputes over territorial and historical issues. A mere 11% believe the two countries' relations will improve to the degree where President Park Geun-hye and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe will hold their first summit. The survey was conducted on around 100 experts and scholars. It's been going down and reaching new lows. Gallup Korea says just 29% of roughly 1,000 Koreans gave President Park Geun-hye good marks on how she's running the country. That's down by a percentage point from a week earlier. It's the first time President Park's approval ratings have dipped into the 20% range since she took office nearly 2 years ago. 63% of respondents said they were not satisfied with the president. The most cited reasons included lack of communication, the controversial tax policy revisions, and the president's failed personnel picks.
Korea's industrial output rose at its slowest pace ever last year, as the domestic economy is still struggling to pick up a decent head of steam. Manufacturers' business sentiment also remains sluggish. Here's our Hwang Jae with more.
Korea posted the worst output growth last year. Statistics Korea says the country's output across all industries went up a mere 1.1% in 2014 from a year earlier. That marks the slowest pace of growth since the year 2000, when the agency started to compile related data. The agency attributed the sluggish growth to an overall downturn last year, as the economy was hit hard by the Sewol-ho ferry disaster and partial strikes in the auto industry. By sector, output in mining and manufacturing remained unchanged from the previous year, while service sector output rose 2.2%. Facility investment, however, jumped more than 4.5% on the back of strong investments in auto and machinery sectors. December's industrial output also rose almost 1% from a month ago after auto workers ended their strikes and factories normalized operations. Still, experts say it's hard to interpret last month's uptick as a recovery sign, as the improvement is largely because of a low base caused by the strikes. Such gloomy economic data is directly reflected in how businesses are seeing the economic conditions. The Bank of Korea says its manufacturers' business sentiment index for this month came in at 73, unchanged from a month earlier. A reading under 100 means pessimists outnumber optimists. Hwang Jae, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, Korea's central bank has hinted that it won't cut interest rates anytime soon, although the country's inflation rate is expected to stay well below the target band. And as our Kim Min-ji tells us, in the face of the nation's ballooning household debt, the bank says a rate cut could do more harm than good.
The Bank of Korea says it will not cut interest rates simply because the nation is expected to have low inflation. In its semi-annual report, the central bank made clear that it will take into account the growing household debt and other negative side effects before implementing any expansionary monetary policies. It said although the country's inflation rate is expected to fall below the bank's target band of 2.5 to 3.5% this year, it doesn't necessarily justify a rate cut. That's because a slump in oil prices and agricultural prices, not a drop in consumer demand, caused a drop in consumer prices to 1.2% in the second half of last year. The bank also brushed aside concerns that the low inflation may herald a long period of economic stagnation for the country. The central bank report says a rate cut now could pose a threat to financial stability. With the country's runaway household debt hitting around $920 billion, economists have warned that a further rise in the debt level could sap consumers of their spending power. The central bank's base rate is already hovering at 2%, a level not seen since the height of the global financial crisis. The central bank cut its rate twice in the second half of last year, in line with the government's efforts to boost the weak domestic economy. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Duty-free shops at Korea's Incheon International Airport are doing great, thanks to Chinese tourists spending some big bucks there. Seeing an opportunity, Korean companies are vying for a slice of that pie. Our Kim Ji-yeon tells us more.
Businesses are in a bidding war to open a duty-free shop at Incheon International Airport. The 14 bidders this year include conglomerates such as Lotte, Silla, and Shinsegae, and smaller licensees like Donghwa. Duty-free shops have seen their sales jump by an average of 10% a year over the past 5 years. The sales volume of the duty-free shops at the Incheon International Airport was among the largest worldwide. The shops at Incheon seem to have a bright future, largely thanks to the increase in the number of Chinese tourists visiting the country, as their spending comprises 35% of total sales at the shops. The airport was named the world's best duty-free shops in a business traveler survey of Chinese tourists in 2014. But the appeal of opening a shop at Incheon cannot be expressed in numbers only. Companies are using the know-how they gain at the airport to expand their business overseas. For example, Lotte reported sales of $3.8 billion last year at duty-free shops in airports and cities around the world, including Japan's Kansai Airport and Guam Airport. That's a six-fold increase from 2000. The Incheon International Airport Corporation says it will finalize which businesses win this year's round of bidding by February 18th. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Keeping our eyes in Incheon International Airport, fewer travelers are passing through Korea's main gateway than before. According to the Incheon International Airport Corporation on Friday, the number of passengers transferring at the airport dropped 6% last year to 7 million, which is 460,000 less than the year 2013. The company says a lower number of Chinese and Japanese passengers passing through Incheon on their way to other international destinations seems to have caused the decline. Chinese airline companies are now offering more non-stop flights to the U.S. Tokyo Haneda Airport also opened international routes to 13 new destinations, upping the total to 16. Incheon Airport authorities are concerned that this could put the airport a step behind in the race to become the hub for Northeast Asia. Well, China was the #1 target for foreign direct investment last year, topping the U.S. for the first time in more than a decade. The country's steady growth was cited as the main reason, along with a general trend toward developing countries. For more on this report, here's our Kwon So-ah.
China became the top destination for foreign direct investment last year, according to the latest report by the UN Conference on Trade and Development. This is the first time it's topped the United States since 2003. Foreign businesses invested over $127 billion into China last year, a $3 billion rise from the previous year. The U.S., on the other hand, saw investments plunge to $86 billion from over $230 in 2013. That put the U.S. in third behind China and Hong Kong, followed by Singapore, Brazil, and the U.K. The U.S. was the only developed country in the top 5. The UN Conference's Director of Investment and Enterprise, James Zahn, says China's performance is attributed to its steady economic growth. He added there have been changes in the investment areas from manufacturing toward the service sector and from labor-intensive fields to tech-intensive ones. And investors are generally shifting away from developed economies to developing ones, with foreign direct investment in developing economies having doubled since the 2008 global financial crisis. Asia alone has accounted for 15% of the inflow last year, the highest amount ever. Although Korea's FDI inflow has been among the bottom 7 out of 8 Asian countries for 6 years, according to a report from last year, the foreign direct investment amount pledged to Korea reached a record high of $19 billion last year, with most investments coming from the EU. And on a report on FDI potential, Korea ranked 4th out of 177 countries. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
A deadly attack in Egypt. A series of bombings targeting a military base in the town of Arirang in North Sinai killed at least 27 people, mostly soldiers. Egyptian officials say militants detonated a car bomb Thursday local time and fired mortar rounds at a hotel, a police club, and several security checkpoints. Also, a flagship government newspaper said its Arirang office, located near the base, had been completely destroyed. The Islamic State's Egypt branch has claimed responsibility for the attack. An army major was also later shot dead at a checkpoint in the border town of Rafah.
Shifting gears now to a different topic now. If you're planning a trip to an urban area anytime soon, this new report called the Safe Cities Index is something you might want to keep an eye on. Topping the list as the safest city in the world is Tokyo, Japan. UK-based think tank Economist Intelligence Unit selected 50 cities from around the world and analyzed them based on 4 criteria: digital security, health security, infrastructure safety, and personal safety. Asian cities like Singapore and Osaka and European ones like Stockholm and Zurich took up some of the other top spots. Unfortunately, Korea, we rank 24th on the list, Seoul that is. Well, safety should always come first. The Korean government is trying to back up that motto with action by educating more young people on public safety. It's planning to strengthen students' safety education programs and offer more hands-on training. Our Park Ji-won reports from the city of Taebaek, where one of Korea's biggest safety training centers is located.
Since last year's tragic ferry disaster that claimed hundreds of innocent young lives, people have pointed to the lack of public safety education in Korea. In response, the nation's education ministry is aiming to strengthen public safety education for students.
The nation grieved over the Sewol-ho ferry tragedy. Life and safety are top priorities for the Park Geun-hye administration, and we aim to give students public safety education to prevent such a tragedy from recurring.
Although the current law stipulates that students undergo 44 hours of public safety education per year, only 6 of those hours are related to disaster prevention. And most of the time is spent in lectures with few opportunities for hands-on training. So on Thursday, the education minister paid a visit to Korea's largest public safety education center located in Taebaek, Gangwon-do province to take a tour. The facility, called 365 Safe Town, provides hands-on training from life-saving techniques to 3-dimensional disaster simulations. The ministry is considering establishing MOUs with safety awareness facilities such as this to provide kids with public safety education that's both fun and effective.
More than ever, we need to raise awareness about public safety among students. We will introduce policies so that public safety awareness facilities like this can be part of students' education.
This month, the Education Ministry will also designate 51 schools nationwide as locations for a pilot program for public safety. Park Ji-won, Arirang News, Taebaek.
The Australian Embassy here in Seoul celebrated the country's biggest holiday, Australia Day, with a special event filled with food and culture. Our Connie Lee takes us there.
Fresh, plump cherries, mangoes as large as your face, and deep red wine. These are just a few of the things that are here in Korea, straight from Australia. Celebrating Australia Day under the theme of Showcasing Australia, the nation's embassy in Seoul held a gala event to highlight all the things the nation has to offer to Korea as a key trade and investment partner. With the Korea-Australia Free Trade Agreement in full effect since December 2014, there are certain items from the land down under that are now cheaper here in Seoul. For instance, these cherries. The removal of the 24% tariff has made these fruits much more affordable to Korean consumers. Likewise for Australian wine.
I'm a lover of wine. It's a personal interest of mine. So I think with the tariff on wine coming down the free trade agreement, I hope to see more range of choice of Australian wine in the market.
The Australian ambassador adds that he wants to stimulate new areas of trade this year and maintain his country's strong defense relationship with Korea.
We put a big emphasis on our defence relationship. Australia is very much an Asia-Pacific country, so peace and stability on the Korean Peninsula is central to our economic health.
The event also included a special performance by Korean-Australian pop singer Tommy Im, the 2013 winner of the singing show X Factor Australia.
I do want to come back to Korea this year, and if I get the opportunity, I want to do my own concert and, actually get to meet my fans and spend a bit more time here.
Connie Lee, Arirang News.
My eyes were glued to the bowl of cherries, and you?
Wine.
Wine, right. Well, we're moving to sports now. I'm calling this South Korean soccer team the Redeem Team after the disappointments in the World Cup. And South Korea and Australia will go head-to-head on Saturday in Sydney to battle out for the rights to claim the Asian Cup title.
And Korea has already beaten Australia in the tournament and has a perfect defensive record. But the Korean team will have to cope with tens of thousands of Aussies cheering their country on.
Well, they say offense wins games, defense wins championships, so I'm rooting for Team Korea. Our SJ Lee gives us a preview of that big match.
5 matches, 5 wins, and not a single goal conceded. Expectations weren't high at the start, but now the South Korean national football team is on the brink of winning its first Asian Cup title in 55 years. But with Australia playing in front of their home crowd, it won't be an easy task as the Socceroos are looking to win their first ever Asian Cup title. It's a battle between the tournament's best defensive team in Korea, who have yet to give up a single goal, and an Australian team that have scored the most goals with 12, with 10 different players finding the back of the net. And while the Taeguk Warriors beat the Socceroos 1-0 in their opening group stage match, most analysts expect the home team will push forward aggressively and try to break through the South Korean defense early on. The final carries extra weight as the winner also qualifies for the 2017 Confederation Cup in Russia. The Asian Cup final between South Korea and Australia kicks off in Sydney on Saturday at 6 p.m. Korea time. SJ Lee, Arirang News.
It's already the last Friday of January. I'm Michelle Park here with the latest weather forecast. It's been a windy day all across Korea, and it still is. Now, temperatures are expected to drop more than the usual overnight, leading us into a cold Saturday morning. But the mercury is expected to recover by noon, and it'll be mild throughout the whole weekend. So for those of you wondering what to do over the weekend, check out this Taepyeoksan Snow Festival and the Boseong Green Tea Plantation Light Festival. Now, the settings for both are very pretty during the day, and there's spectacular of lights at night, giving you this majestic feeling. So you could visit either day or night. Now, both events are coming to an end, so be sure to check them out this weekend. Now, the first week of February is looking mild, with temperatures hovering near a seasonal average. However, rain is also expected down south on Wednesday and in Gangwon-do on Thursday. So for those of you in these regions, have your umbrellas handy. Now, let's take a look at the readings for tomorrow. So we'll start off the Saturday morning at -7 and gets up to 2 in the afternoon, while Daegu and Busan will top out at 4 and 6 degrees. And moving over to other regions, Jeju Island gets up to 5, Dokdo hits down to 0, while Bangkok dips low to -8 degrees. Well, that's all for now, Michelle Park, and I hope you have a wonderful evening. And here's a look at the weather conditions around the world.
Well, that does it for us for this week. For our viewers tuning in from Korea, have a safe trip back home or wherever you might be headed on this Friday. This has been Daniel Chang.
And I'm Lee Ji-yoon, and our Daniel will be back with our Na Hyung-kyung again next week. It's been a ton of fun bringing you guys the news for the past 2 weeks. Have a great weekend, everyone.